So, Martin Wilson, as introduced, so this is my title and my topic. If I had a subtitle, it would be this. It would be The Long Walk Home. I also live in Highland, so at every possible excuse, we need to put up a lovely picture of Highland. So to help us, we're going to meet Beyonce, the old boy from Up, ABBA, and the Spice Girls. Okay. So if you're bored and don't like what I'm saying, oh sorry, I need to not go off because you've been videoed. You've got to try and work out what Beyonce track. In fact, there's two Beyonce's tracks. What Spice Girls track and what ABBA track is going to be the theme of my talk. Confidence and confidentiality. So none of the example cases I'm going to use are real life stories, okay? But they are all true, okay? You should be recognizing the scenarios that I'm saying here just now. First, the bits I want to take you away. We're on an electronic word, and this will be uploaded on YouTube, so people are switching off about now, because we've been going for about 90 seconds, so I thought I'd get the headline messages out to start off with, so any of you that are out there in internet land, not long to go now. Multi-morbid or frail adults, and so the key features, there's often a very long phase where somebody could die. They might not, it's a long phase where you could die. It is very dependent on intercurrent and unpredictable events. So I've got plenty of people who ask me about length of life, and you go, well, if you get bad chest infection this winter, it might be curtains, and if you don't, you might last a few more winters. I mean, it's a longer, nicer conversation than that, but we are truncating a little bit. And it can feel like a long time to be dying or palliative for, so people in the room will be getting used to this, okay? So you will have relatives, elderly relatives, it's going to happen to yourself, who might die of an episode, and they get over it, and everyone's round, and everyone's really uptight, and all the rest of it, and it's all completely fine, and then they don't die. And that happens 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It starts to feel that every time you book a holiday out with the country, they get ill. And that's a huge pressure when you... Okay. So the most valuable assets in primary care are unpaid carers, families, neighbours, friends. Paid carers, nursing home beds. Those are the top 3. So everything we do is about keeping these things going as long as possible, really, because they're the best value and they do the best job. So you put in things to support people, and therefore their unpaid care, or husband, wife, whatever it is, will last longer without collapsing. I put in physio and OT and get gadgets and things like that. That means they need less home care than they perhaps did before, and I don't have a lot of it out there. It's a very valuable and scarce asset, not in what they're paid, but in what they do. Nursing home beds are exactly the same. In Scotland this morning, more people woke up in a nursing home bed than a hospital bed, all right? I'm pretty sure it's the same for England. Anybody really take that on board? Oh, there is a 4th one, but you out there in internet land, you'll have to listen longer to hear what that is. Key priority, I'll skip over this because we've heard it today, public and clinician education. Some of this is educating people in the room. Dying can take longer and be less tidy than you presume. You're very likely to need hands-on personal care before you die. That is a shock to everybody who's not thought about that before. Every single day I get intelligent people who've often worked in the healthcare system all the day who just have never considered it until it actually happens to their relative that they're looking after. Lastly, expensive interventions sell themselves. The push is needed on elements that support basic care. They are much harder to sell, okay? And you're going to get a bit more of that. Next, different spin on demographics. Age is not the main problem. It is not even in the top 3, okay? What's the ABBA song?
Money.
Well, hey, money, money, money. Excellent, very good indeed. Last night in my little room upstairs, it was Top of the Pops does ABBA, and it was fantastic. Anyway, okay. Really very good, but money, money, money. Okay, so multi-morbidity is common. Okay, we've got nice data linkage in Scotland. It's a Scottish publication. So how old you are going by the number of conditions that you've got. So majority of over 65s have more than 2, majority of over 75s have more than 3, okay? So we've developed a healthcare system around dealing with one problem at a time, and actually that's not the population we're dealing with. Be careful with this graph. Okay, I am being recorded, but the best thing I heard from a GP in Govan was we put a £1 billion hospital in Govan that sorts precisely none of the problems of Govan. Anyway. I'm not usually videoed, so here we go. So as you can tell, be careful with this graph, because this graph makes you think that the problem is all older people with lots of conditions. It's not, because of the demographic baby boom. And remember, there was 2, one after the First World War, one after the Second. If you're looking numerically, you've got more people under 65 with 4 or more conditions than over 65 with 4 or more conditions. Isn't that fantastic? But deprivation makes a massive effect. You get your multimorbidity 10 years earlier. Beware about the right-hand corner of this graph. It looks like the older you get, the less of the gap gets. That's not true. It's just because there's so few deprived people who make it to those ages. Deprivation and functional impairment. In Highland, I'm going to personalise this, okay? I live in the bottom one, the rich bit, okay? The least deprived centre. I am a doctor. I am paid in gold, okay? So I live in the rich part of the country, as do most doctors in the room, unless you're making very silly financial decisions. But I compare that to other people who work in my hospital, I tend to my visitors, who are in the poorest part. They get all the same problems, but they get it 10, 15 years earlier. Look at this. So between the age of 75 and 85, I can expect 10% of me and my buddies to go from having 10% of me and my buddies having moderate problems with function to 25%. In the poorest postcode, that happens between 35 and 50. You know, I'm not doing a geriatric conference here, but we really need to be careful about how we define this. Healthy life expectancy in Scotland by men. Okay, I've done men not because I'm sexist, because it's so stark. Okay, it's just so stark. It is a different planet. All right. So men in the most deprived areas, your healthy life expectancy is 53. Okay. Least deprived, where I live, 71. Okay, and it gets better the older you get. And I was, my specialty was moaning about our pensions. I mean, how embarrassing. You know, and the last thing about this is, where do all the decision makers live? What column are we all in? We're all in the left-hand one, the richest one. Hence, we design healthcare systems around what we think the world looks like. One of the things that's helping the world for the frail elderly at the moment is the people that are decision makers now, their parents are starting to hit this because they've got older enough that their parents get older. And it's a different experience. If your mother is 90 and you're looking after her, you're likely to be near the end of your career, financially secure, your kids are away, so you get a bit more time to help. If you're further down the line, it's much more likely that your mother's getting problems when you're 60 and you're 30 and your kids are at primary school, okay? And that's a very different problem to try and crack. So on average, if you're rich, you live longer in good health, you've got a shorter proportion of life in poor health, you're more likely to have a single pathology, you are more likely to be the sort of person that sets up the healthcare system. And remember the inverse care law. Which of these groups gets the most spent on it? It's the richest one by a mile. It doesn't feel like it because we always hear about deprived postcodes spending more times in A&E and acute medical receiving wards, but all the really expensive interventions are much more likely to go to rich people. That has been true ever since the NHS was set up. Do you want to do a postcode analysis on your hospice discharges? So, back to the old boy and up, and I'm going to let him marry Beyonce, okay? So by the time this story starts, they're getting on a little bit, okay? And she's in her late 70s, okay? And she loves reading a newspaper and chatting to her mates, and he spends a lot of time in the garden, okay? Secret to a long and happy marriage is not to spend too much time together, okay? And they're managing that just now, okay? See, everyone in the room is probably at the stage of your life where you think that you're not spending enough time with your loved one, okay? Wait to the shock you get when you retire and you spend all the time with your loved one. I'm glad it's not just me that's worried about this. And we need to educate society in this because we get so many problems with this. Think about how much conversation with your loved one depends on things that happened when you were not together. You know, and how much of your identity is about coming to different things apart. You spend all day together for a long period of time. It can be stressful, particularly if that role suddenly changes. So you retire, you're spending all the time with them, and all of a sudden you're now caring for them as well. Okay, I'll come back to that next bit later. They've got a family, but the family live far away. That's a practical reality now. It's not because families all of a sudden hate parents. It's because of how society works. You typically have to go away to study, to train, to get your job. That's how economics work. The more people that do that, the more normal it gets. It now seems not as normal to stay 2 streets out from where you lived. So when things are going wrong, it's quite possible you have a very long way away from where your parents actually are. I don't know. I mean, that might not apply quite so much into you, but I think it probably does. I live in Highland. Nobody lives close to their relatives. You know, it's practically quite difficult. I'm going to do some nasty things to her, so I'm going to give her a lovely house and a lovely car that they go fleeing about in the weekend, all right? Wish I could do this in real life. Wouldn't it be really good? You get people at 80 and go, you know what? If you promise never to bother the health service again, okay? We're going to give you half the cash we estimate your spend's going to be. Deal or no deal, okay? I can just imagine... You can just imagine Noel Edmonds doing that. But that would be quite... I always wonder, why don't we do that with cancer therapy? You've got really nasty cancer, okay, this is what it's going to cost to treat it, okay? We can actually just give you that money in a box now, or not, and then you would soon get an idea about what the decision-making on that is. Priorities here. Okay, so this is early. Okay, so a wee bit of anticipatory care here. Ensure the simple things are prompted. Power of attorney and wills. We've heard about that this morning. Again, you're in the mark. You understand this, but we can't push this hard enough. The catastrophe people get, particularly if they don't have power of attorney, can be dramatic. Future protecting, okay? Remember that the main determinants of healthcare are nothing to do with what we do, okay? We heard this morning, wrongly, that medicine's helping people live longer. It is a tiny factor in people living longer, okay? It is better food, better water, better hygiene, better housing. That's what's increased life expectancy, okay? Medicine has a tiny impact to play. Same when you get older. Things that bring people into hospital are medical health problems. The thing that keep people in hospital are social problems. Can you survive in that house? You know, if you can't survive without getting up the stairs in that house, then you have a real problem brewing at some point in your life, okay? You know, sure, you can turn your living room into, a sort of bedroom. You can put a bed in there. You can put a commode in there. That rapidly becomes existing, okay? Are you in a suitable location? I live in Highland. I'm obsessed with this, okay? How would you manage without a car? The only people that drive up until the day they die are the ones that drive into trees, okay? I would like an information campaign on this. I would like a green card system for Highland, okay? We hear a lot about immigration these days. I want to do immigration to Highland. You know, if you move to Highland to retire and move up a lovely glen where you went on holiday, I really want people to think about how can you, if you can't manage a car, how are you going to get food? Okay, for instance. People do need to think about this. And these things are possible to think about if you think about it far enough away. If you don't think about it far enough away, you can get left with very, very few choices in crisis situations and potentially ending up in care homes and things like that earlier than you wish to. Lastly, and this gets more controversial as the talk goes on, but never mind, I come from Highland. If you don't like it, I can just go back. And you don't invite me again and everybody's happy. Okay, so consider time to benefit when considering treatment. This is a really important point. An awful lot of things we do don't help people straight at that point. They've got to live long enough to get the benefit from those treatments. The adult's view, this is a good time to have hard conversations because it might not be too much longer that they can be heard or be audible. You're all aware of that. The closer to the end people get, particularly in frailty categories, the quieter they get, the less well heard they get, the more other voices come up. And this is really tough for a generation. At what point does it start to become an unwise move to avoid a peaceful death? So Scotland's got quite big on a thing called realistic medicine. Some of the research behind that was that doctors will regularly push treatments on patients that they would not accept themselves. All right? So you get them, you know, what would you provide for situation X, Y, and Z? You do the questionnaires again. If you were in this situation, what would you want? Now, I'm not going to give particularly case examples here because that gets too personal, but be careful about that. Treatment outcomes. Okay, so people are quite good at describing for treatments, what's your prospect of a good result, a win, and what's your prospect of dying? That's not really the helpful thing because most people, you know, when I get to older people, they're quite aware of the thing that dies. Well, if I die, okay, everyone's got to die. That's fine. I'll take a chance on that. There's a third state, a prospect of existence in a reduced state. It's the sort of thing that people need to start taking into account when making decisions like this. And this time is definitely a time to start dealing with this. Unrealistic statements, there's loads of them. Number one is, I never want to go into a care home. I promised him or her I never would put them into a care home. They are never made with a realistic expectation of what that would mean in practice. I've heard husbands and wives destroying themselves to try and keep this promise. And if I could have got a video of the last 4 years of the horror that they went through and taken a time machine, I'm Doctor Who now, I go back and I show it to the partner that's receiving that care and said, is this what you meant when you said you made him promise not to go into a care home? They would go, no. Not what you want. So things are going to get worse for this lady, okay? She's going to go on a frailty curve. You all recognise this. I nicked it from Prof. Murray from palliative care consultant up the road. So you go downhill, you get a blip, you get better, you don't quite get back to where you were before. Very familiar with this in geriatrics the last 100 years. You're getting familiar with it in palliative care and oncology now as well. There's plenty of previously terminal metastatic conditions that are now chronic illnesses. You get worse, you get treatment A, B, C, D, and E. This one, we're going to give her an MI, give her diabetes, give her TIA, then an atrial fibrillation episode. She's going to get COPD diagnosed. She's going to fall and break her back. She's going to get dementia diagnosed later on, and then she'll get problems with recurrent UTIs. That's just one frailty story, things falling apart. You don't quite get back to where before. People largely don't notice what's happening. Because what you do is you reduce the box of your life as your function goes down. And actually families can get a real shock when you get to the end of this and haven't realised what reserve they've got. How come she's dying? You know, she was great last week. No, she wasn't. It's just that she's been going down for a bit. It's a real problem with people who get very old. Certainly had family members in their 90s having to explain this to my family, which is difficult because they all think I'm 12 years old still. That the memory they had of the well-functioning individual was no longer accurate. They are no longer the fittest person in the village, for instance. Current function, well, he doesn't see so much of his garden anymore. And getting backwards and forwards to the toilet is involving a lot of the day. Night times are a nightmare. She gets to, she's up 2 or 3 times. She gets to sleep. He doesn't. Meal times, trying to get food into her is an extraordinary challenge. And it becomes feels like a bit of a battle zone. Unless the family come round, if the kids are back for the weekend, she eats great and say wonderfully constructive things like, you just need to encourage your dad. Okay. And then all of a sudden, he's the problem. He goes, oh, for heaven's sake, and they go, oh my goodness, Dad, I think you need to, and you've got to be careful with that. It's the stress you put on carers. All of a sudden, they can do that. They can do some difficult things. And that lovely house now seems like a very small place. Your house is only you can stop a house from being a home. The good memories that you've had in these houses can quickly be overridden. This is her medication list, okay? I'm not even getting started, okay? Now, my talk today is not about polypharmacy. That's the one tomorrow in Glasgow, okay, if you want to nip up. But you guys need to be able to deal with this, okay? You need to be confident and develop the confidence and get the training you need and talk to your general practice colleagues about how you start picking into this. Because you'll get patients of all categories, of all ages, who are approaching the frail end, who are on stupid drug lists like this, okay? And you need to be able to know how to tackle it. Think about this. He's got to get all these pills into her before breakfast, okay? There's a thing called number needed to treat. How many people need to treat to get a difference, okay? So the only number needed to treat drug out there is food, okay? So you give one person food, they do well. If you give one person no food, they die. It's an incredibly effective treatment, okay? And piling all this rubbish into her is probably limiting her access to the number needed to treat the most effective medication that she's got, food, okay? Right. Things to try and crack this down. When I'm doing this in smaller groups, I'm trying to take people through this. What are the patient's priorities likely to be? So you've got method act being demented, and it'll be about security. The world's a very small place. It's a very confusing place. The toilet, where's my husband? That type of thing. What's the carer's priorities likely to be? There's going to be a lot of guilt there. I can't look after her well enough. I promise this. I promise that. Promise the next thing. You'll be getting exhausted, but won't realise it. What the health services priorities likely to be? What's the number one health service priority for this woman? Don't admit her to hospital. Yes, well done. There's people in the audience said that. As if when you go through it, and you can spend as long as you like in small groups, you will never, ever get anyone that says that they're sitting there going, bags packed, I hope today's the day I get admitted to that wonderful hospital down the road. Okay, there's a huge interface problem. And I tell you, this avoidance of admission thing, it's quite pernicious, okay? And you have to be careful about how much people are supporting things because they think the side effect will be avoiding admissions. You need to try and help the adult at first. Systems do love certainty, though. Follow the guideline, follow the guideline, follow the guideline. Are they for IVs, HCU, ITU, CPR? Tell me now, tell me now, tell me now. Okay, in this type of situation, okay? You're all familiar with this then, yes, okay? You can't do it in that situation. So what happens next? What happens next in this scenario? You've got a scenario. You've all been thinking about it for a wee bit. Go on. Okay, what other things that might happen next? Yeah, that's right. Well done. He dies. That's the only problem with the film up. The wrong person died, okay? Although that would have really spoiled the story, and it's a wonderful film. But he dies, okay? And we need to recognise this more and more and more, okay? The pressure on carers is absolutely gigantic, okay? And we lose them all the time. And you see this more and more often. It used to be that on my ward, the carer of a patient, often a husband or a wife, would die while they were in. And it would happen once every few years, and we would remember it for quite a long time. I look after a community hospital up in the north. We had 28 patients. At one point, 3 of their husbands had died while they were admitted, one of whom while waiting for the home visit to occur to try and get his wife home. Okay, because of the increase in the number of the population, these stories that you heard from time to time are incredibly common now. So what happens to her? Oh, well, actually, we'll go through what happens to her next, okay? So what would have made the difference here? Home care, paid or unpaid family, perhaps flexibly, okay? Just to support them lasting a bit longer at home and to give him the concept of respite, trying to make it last a bit longer. And that can be respite of whatever type. It might be taking him out to the football, for instance, getting him a bit of a break, somebody else. care home before the stage of collapse. Now, you will all be hearing this all over the country about trying to get people to go into care homes later and later and later. Now, there is a reasonable reason to do that, but we need to be careful it's not beyond the stage of it being absolutely broken. We know for a fact that people who pay for care homes themselves go in earlier at a lower level of disability than people who the state pay for. So if people actually have choice, which is money in every society, they will choose to go in earlier. Lots and lots of wise, supportive words and listening, and a family on the same page. That helps a lot. Things that make almost no difference are most of her pills, not all of them. She's on thyroxine, it's very good. CT scans, blood tests, admissions to exclude things. Anyone who focuses on just one bit is a catastrophe for this lady. Needs to be the over picture. So most valuable assets in palliative care, unpaid carers, and this is about the most valuable asset here was him. So we all agree, talk is good, focus on the whole picture, individualised treatment, treat the unit as well as the individual. Well, what's the Beyonce song? Nope. Almost no. I'll give you, it's All the Single Ladies, okay? All the Single Ladies. Anyone does geriatrics, it's All the Single Ladies, okay? And it was the district nursing team in Thurso who got the first answer first for that. More ranting. Society is very unrealistic at where they die. I'm aware I'm preaching to the choir here, okay, because you do know this, but maybe not as quite as you know. This is the change in location of death in Highland over the last decade, okay? There was a reduction in deaths in hospital. There was a lot of work in anticipated care and all the rest of it as well, but it wasn't because more people are dying at home, it's because more people are dying in care homes. 30% increase in the number of people dying in care homes, okay? That's where people are, that is the market. That's where people are going to be dying in greater waves. And that doesn't feel like that. Place of death is a feminist issue, all right? Women are a lot more likely to die in care home than men. They care for their men who die because we're useless. And there is no one left to care for them. So the stats we did in Highland was the way to get, so the best chance you had of dying at home was if you're a man under the age of 60. And that's purely pragmatism because you're more likely to have somebody there to care for you. So I'm sitting there going, you know, I love my wife and if she gets ill, I'll care for her. But she's in the blooming house, okay? You know, so even if I didn't like her, I'm going to end up caring for her anyway because, you know, it's much easier to do that than to get somebody else to do it for me. You know, I care for my kids, it's the same sort of thing. You know, it's a much different thing about I love my mum and dad as well. But to care for them, I'd have to move to Glasgow. I'd have to take my kids out of school. I'd have to change my job. I'd have to do all the rest of it as well. There's an awful lot more barriers to me actually becoming the carer in that circumstance. And actually, it wouldn't happen. You know, I wouldn't make that level of move. 2012 to 2012, 13% of male deaths were in a care home that year, 26% of female deaths, okay? And it's going to go up. So, next thing that happens is she ends up in a care home, all right? And then we get the next problem, that she's very frail, okay? And she gets ill, she gets admitted to hospital, family all come round. She gets some various treatments and doctor comes in. And doctor goes, look, she's not doing very well and what do you want to do? I think maybe we should just maybe call it quits now. Or a nicer term than that. And, and the family go, aye, all right, no problem at all. But she gets better, as often happens after these conversations. You stop the stupid pills, you stop the drips, you just look after her properly, and she gets better. She goes back to the care home, she gets out for a few days, some days are better than others. And then it happens again. And then it happens again. Okay? And this is a nightmare, okay? She could die on any of those deteriorations, but doesn't, okay? And you can get learned immortality. The doctor said she would die 3 times so far. You've all met this, it's extremely, we need to communicate this. It's a nightmare, unpredictable situation. So let's call the family unrealistic. Happens all the time. So we hear all these crap phrases, okay? Oh, that's okay, crap's okay. I'm from Scotland, it means something different up there. Okay. Kind of a term of endearment. Anyway, okay. So, unrealistic relatives, distant relative syndrome. You will have heard of this, I'm sure. You'll have heard of this chat, okay? It is often that they're just seeing a different reality, plus emotion, plus really, really not wanting it to happen now. People have other things going on in their life. You know, if it is the 5th time you've lost your summer holiday and actually your wife's getting a bit stressed out that she's never seen you anyway and you're always spending time going up to see your mum. And sometimes the health service is a bit rubbish, okay? You know, that they don't believe what you said because actually one of the times you were in before, we did actually talk rubbish and do something stupid and drop her when we were transferring her or something like that. And also Tolstoy, okay? Tolstoy, if you want to know about dying, read Victorian authors, okay? All of up, this is the first line of what book? Well done. Excellent. Brilliant book, isn't it? Yeah. Makes you a better human. Anyway, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way, okay? I get unhappy families pushing for treatment more than happy ones. When you tick back in it, unfortunately, we all have children whose parents were just horrible to them, okay? Either through, any sort of neglect, whatever you can mention, and they are much more likely to be, I've found that in a lot of times, they're much more likely the ones that can't let go and make you want to try and go on longer and longer. But even the best advanced care planning is not as good as a functional family who can talk about difficult things. And that's partly what we're educating the population. So we, folk in the room, and online if you're still there, probably not because it's well into minutes now, you really need to be able to understand and explain frailty and all the uncertainty that goes with that. That is the key thing about medicine now, is explaining uncertainty. So most valuable assets in passive care, unpaid carers, paid carers, nursing home beds, and a human being who can explain what's going on. Spice Girls song, anybody? You've had those? Yay! Excellent. Wannabe, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. It's also a fabby slide as well. Okay. So what do we really want? We're in an election season at the moment, so we want good care in our old age. But we really want lots of hospitals, lots of expensive doctors, lots of expensive drugs, lots of expensive treatments and short waiting lists. And at the end of the day, that is what we are voting for in our droves. Let's compare a little bit of a lovability index here, okay? Hospices look after people near the end of life. Holistic care is paramount, free at point of access. Lovability index is off the chart. You're a well-loved set of people, I'm glad to say. Chances of a fun run been done for your local hospice. London Marathon was 2 weeks ago. Lots of that. People who work in them, well-respected staff and individuals, quite high kudos. Care homes, people near the end of life. Holistic care is paramount. It is means tested. Okay. Lovability index is not quite so good. I spoke at the National Nursing Home meeting in Scotland a wee while ago, and they really are under a cloud. Every time you see them on the telly, it is like, visions of prisons and things like that. These are people's homes. Chance of a fun run been done for your local hospice? So local care home? Not good at all. They will run past the care home where you are more likely to die. I'm sorry to stand in the marathon, outside a care home, and, people running for hospice. No, you're not going to die there. You're going to die here. Run for this one. Okay? Under a bit of a cloud, if I have an advert for my local hospice for a nursing job, I'll get like 1 million strong applicants, okay? The care home across the road will get none. That's just wrong. We need to sort that. So palliative care has a high lovability index. You do, okay? I know there's a lot of stuff today about your respect from other specialties. Your lovability from the public is gigantic, okay? You have political influence. You can raise a lot of cash and you can mobilize a lot of people. So what would I like? Support, even subsidising with time and money and political influence, good care homes, good care agencies, good respite, training in both and maybe pay for backfill, that type of thing. There was an excellent question this morning about practical ways to help this out. Please ask me that question again in the panel debate, okay? Please, who was it? Yeah, okay. And use the brand to increase the attractiveness of these workplaces, because we need people to want to go and work there. We want good people to want to go and work there. We heard the students this morning, great idea. They all sounded like they were doing a management training program or something, and we have a desperate need for medical managers. I'd love it if we sent them all out to work in care homes for a couple of years. My quality of junior doctoring would go out of sight and they would earn a bit of money, and I'll talk about that in a wee second. A human being who can understand and explain what can palliative care to do encourage folk into general practice, district nursing, home care, care homes, all the places where the palliative care actually happens. Thank you very much.